is the form of the highest self, wherein the world of subject and object, though existing, does not exist, and which, though all akasa, has no touch with it. It is all void, and yet as if it were no void. The world is not in it. It continues to be completely void, though full of numberless worlds upon worlds. Yoga Vasishtha. The whole of this cosmos is one self. There is no room for the idea of body and its like. That is all that is, all bliss. Whatever thou seest is all thought. Yoga Vasishtha. As light belongs to the sun, coldness to water, and heat to fire, so do existence, consciousness, bliss, eternity, immutable purity, belong by nature to that Atma Bodha. The material cause of this illusion is none other than that. The whole of the universe is therefore that, and nothing else, that being the all. Causality is mere illusion, the real truth being thus known. There can be no room for the slightest separateness. Apar Oksha Nubute. This real self is the bridge, the support of the whole universe, which, but for it, will be nowhere. Chandogyo Upanishad. That is all bliss of every kind. Attaining this bliss, one realizes his nature, which is all bliss. Ta Itereyo Upanishad. That, therefore, is the last measure of all bliss. Ta Itereyo Upanishad. The one ever effulgent stands concealed in all beings. It pervades every noble object, and is the inner self of all. It is the witness of all action, the all-embracing resort of beings, the unaffected seer, all thought, unique and without properties. Upanishad. What does that say? Oh, Holy Spirit. It neither... Well, the Holy Spirit, Gabriel, Ruch Kaduch, is not so unlimited. It has neither form nor instruments. It is not seen equal to or greater than anything. It transcends. Its transcendent power is heard of as unimaginably multifarious. Omniscience and omnipotence constitute its very nature. Upanishad. It is unborn, ever awake, free from dream, having no form or no name. It is one continuous thought. All-knowing. There is no metaphor whatever in saying this. Gauda Patacharya. This, O Satyakama, is that higher as well as lower. Science and essence, all is that. Prasnopanishad. As above, so below, as below, so above. He passes from death to death, who here finds the least shadow of variety. There is no variety in that. It should be grasped by the mind alone. He indeed passes from death to death, who here finds the least shadow of variety. Kathopanishad. As a hawk or an eagle, having soared high in the air, wings its way back to its resting place, being so far fatigued, does the soul, having experienced the phenomenal, return into itself, where it can sleep beyond all desires, beyond all dreams. Brihadaranyako-panishad. The sun does not shine there, nor the moon, nor the stars, nor even these lightnings, least of all the spire. Everything becomes enlightened. In its light, the whole of this shines through its luster. Kathopanishad. Part 3. The Real Self. A particle of its bliss supplies the bliss of the whole universe. Everything becomes enlightened in its light. Nay, all else appears worthless after a sight of that essence. I am indeed of this supreme eternal self. Vijnananauka. The power of sun, moon, fire, and even speech having exhausted itself, the senses being all extinguished, that which stands self-illumined, beyond all relations, sending forth this universe of ideas and all thought, is shown to be the inner self of all. Svraj Yasiddhi. I am without character, without action, without imagination, without relation, without change, without form, without sin, all eternity, ever liberated. Atma Bodha. If thou objectest how I should grasp this, pray, do not grasp it, for the residuum, after all grasping, is at end, is none other than thy real self. Panchadasi. Where is the man who doubts the fact of his own existence? If such a one be found, he should be told that he himself, who thus doubts, is the self he denies. Svat Manirupana. No other knowledge is necessary in knowing oneself, for the self is all knowledge. The lamp requires not the light of another lamp for its own illumination. Atma Bodha. Setting aside everything which becomes the object of knowledge in this world, there yet remains a residuum, the real essence of knowledge, the knowledge that this is the real self, is true knowledge of the self. Panchadasi. It is the ear of ears, the mind of minds, the speech of speech, the breath of breaths, the eye of eyes, the wise transcending these, i.e., the physical ear, mind, etc., and renouncing this world of experience, rest in eternal immortality. Upanishad. This self in my heart is smaller than a grain of rice, or barley, or mustard, smaller than a grain of siamaka, or even than a part of its part, and yet the self in my heart is bigger than the earth, more extensive than the atmosphere, wider than the sky, greater than all these worlds together. It is all action, all desire, all smell, all taste. It pervades all that is. It is void of speech and all other senses, ever indifferent to good or evil. This indeed is the self in my heart. This indeed is the real self. He becomes this real self after passing away from here, who has faith in the self and has no doubt whatever. Upanishad. All this is the one self. The self is the universal self. Upanishad. As the fool with eyes all bedimmed sees the sun all dark, though covered only with a cloud, so does it appear in bondage only to the victims of illusion. I am this pure self, whose form is all eternal consciousness. Hastamalakastotra. It is the one pervading all, but ever untouched by any, and therefore ever pure, and all clear, like the all-pervading akasa. I am this pure self, whose form is all eternal consciousness. Hasta Malakastotra. It is without mind, without eyes, without any similar means of relating itself to the objective, but nevertheless it is the mind as well as the eye of all minds and eyes, nay, the means of means, its form being ever incomprehensible by the mind, the eyes, and the rest. I am this pure self, all eternal consciousness. Hastamalakastotra, and reminds you of the Greek word for God, theos, or theps, or then, or thon, or, there's forms of the same thing, but they had this belief that the human being, they figured out that it wasn't quite the eyes that saw, it was something in the head. Of course, the eyes were as the organ of that, but, and they weren't denying that, but, so they had this idea of beings that could see without the physical body. That's not the most explicit way to state it, but, I am indeed that supreme, eternal, real self, which is all bliss, all light, beyond illusion, beyond conditions, realizable only in the idea I am. Vijnananauka. It is this infinite atom. All this is that self from end to end. The camera's got to learn that I just shake. It is the truth. It is the self. O Svetaketa, thou art that. Upanishad. As a lump of salt melted in water cannot be experienced by the eye, but only by the tongue, so indeed the ever-existent real self, shining in the depth of the heart, cannot be realized by the eternal senses, but only by the light of that sympathetic awakening which comes from the word of a teacher. Thou indeed art this real self, not the phenomenal that appears around. Svaraj Yasiddhi. The ocean transformed through the action of clouds into the form of rivers, etc., ceases to be itself. So indeed hast thou forgotten thyself through the power of conditions. O friend, remember thy full self. Thou art the real self, the ground of existence, the all. Svarajasiddhi. Where there is anything like duality, there alone does one see another. There alone does one smell another. There alone does one hear another. There alone does one speak to another. There alone does one think of another. There alone does one know another. But when all is one self, to him, what should he smell, and with what? What should he see, and with what? What should he hear, and with what? What should he speak of, and with what? What should he think of, and with what? What should he know, and with what? By what should that be known through, which knows everything? By what should the knower be known? Upanishad. It is not attainable by the most constant attendance at lectures, for many, though hearing numerous such, never know what it is. Strange indeed is the speaker who speaks of it, stranger still who obtains it, but most strange of all is he who, being properly instructed by a competent teacher, realizes it in himself and all. Upanishad. Part 4. The Way. The study should not allay in thee the sense of separateness. The mind cannot take on the form of that essence, and thou canst not realize the real self. Four indeed are the gatekeepers at the entrance of the palace of liberation. 1. Self-restraint. Contemplation. 2. 3. Contentment. 4. Company of the wise. Yuga Vashishtha. And they wouldn't have said the numbers, they would just listed them, but that's how we speak in the West. He alone escapes from the web of illusion in this world, even like the Lord of Beasts from the trap, which holds him fast, who, with all acts, all pleasures, attuned to the supreme aim, puts forth strong personal effort in that behalf. Yoga Vashishtha. Trees continue to vegetate, and so do live on beasts and birds. He alone lives whose mind lives, not in consequence of taking on a variety of forms. All Holy Writ is so much burden to him who has no discrimination. All philosophy is so much burden to him whose germ of desire is not destroyed. The mind is so much burden to him who has not acquired self-control. The body is so much burden to him who knows only the anatman, not self. Yoga Vasishtha. There can be no man more despicable than him who does not put into practice the words of the proficient teacher who explains with great pains the real truth on being questioned. Yoga Vasishtha. All desire is ignorance. The destruction of desire is liberation. And this liberation, O Rama, is easily brought about only by ceasing to desire. The mind experiences bondage from firm conviction. I am not the real self. It realizes entire freedom from the equally firm conviction. I am the real self. Yoga Vasishtha. He continually sees the real self, who studies to unify philosophy and the teacher's explanations with the facts of his own consciousness. Yoga Vasishtha. The light breaking in upon the mind should not be excluded by that false logic which puts forth unholy guesses of every kind, up to the obliteration of even the facts of consciousness. Yoga Vasishtha. With no confidence in the facts of his own consciousness, and with the obvious endlessness of argumentation, how would he who poses himself as a professor of logic obtain conviction of truth? If argumentation is meant as a help to the intellect, you are welcome to argue in accord with the facts of your consciousness, but certainly not to argue without aim in any line you choose. Panchadasa. The sense of this can never be gathered by intellect alone. O beloved one, it leads to real knowledge only when used by one who really knows. This knowing is that which thou, O child of truth, hast already acquired. O not chick etos. There indeed can be no better questioner than thyself. Kathopanishad. This self is not realizable by study, nay, not even by intelligence or much learning. The self unfolds its full essence to him alone who applies his self to self, he who has not given up the ways of vice, he who is not able to control himself, he who is not at peace within, he whose mind is not at rest, can never realize the self. Though full of all the learning in the world, that which lies at the root of all distinctions of caste and creed is its food, even death itself is its drink. Who, not so prepared, can know what it is? Kathopanishad. How can books enlighten that lump of clay fashioned in the form of man, who does not in any manner realize the truth explained to him with all possible clearness? Na-ish karm yasiddha. Na-ish karm yasiddhi. We rejoice with those whom we recognize as centered in self-realization. The rest we pity. With the deluded, we do not care to argue. Panchadasi. Talk as much philosophy as you please. Worship as many gods as you like. Observe all ceremonies. Sing devoted praises of any number of deities. Liberation never comes, even at the end of 100 kalpas, without realization of the oneness of self. Now, a lot of these terms don't have to be thought of as different entities, but it's certainly not as much about litanies as what you do with them. Who knows spiritual consciousness, passes beyond death, and enters immortality? Upanishad. The good is one thing, the agreeable another. Men find them in a variety of objects and become bound. One way or another, he who attaches himself to the supreme good reaps the highest bliss. He who pursues the agreeable is cheated of the real object of existence. Kathopanishad. Yeah, life's not about agreement or disagreement, but you gotta be willing to be upon both. These, the good and the agreeable, thou knowest, are opposed one to the other in their very nature, and having entirely different results in store. O Nachikitasi. Oh, Nachikitas. The various desires I propose to thee fail to move. Thou art really devoted to the agreeable alone, groping about in its night. Fools flatter themselves with wisdom and learning, and continue to tumble about without end, like the blind led by the blind. Kathopanishad. Undakopanishad. I guess they both have that quote. The lyre, with all the beauty of its make, and the melody of its music, serves at best to please the hearer. It cannot lead to universal empire. In the same manner, all the flow of speech, all the stream of sweet sounds, all the skill expended in explaining philosophy, all that the learned call learning, has the senses and mind, not the self, for its end. Vain is the study of philosophy if it leads not to the essence. Equally vain is all philosophy if the essence is realized. Vivekatudamani. Disease disappears not with the mere name of medicine, but by actually swallowing it. Taking of the self without proper realization can never bring about liberation. Till the objective is not dissolved in the subject, till the essence of self is not realized, no liberation can come from speaking its mere name. All the fruits of such activity is only waste of so much breath. Vivekatudamani.